And happy post-Thanksgiving all. So we are continuing with Judges chapter 17. We left off at verse 7. We read verses 1 to 6. We're introduced to the judge named Micha, who took 1,100 shekels from his mother, set up an idol house in his town, and also a priest there. One of his sons became priest there. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And verse 6 reminds us, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. No matter how wrong it was, that's what they did. Okay, I think that's what that comment means, that this guy just set up an idol house. We just had the whole Torah. We had the book of Joshua and Judges, all about, trying to ensure that Israelites maintain connection to God, and here's this guy setting up this idol house. So let's see what happens with this. It's only 6 more verses until the end of the chapter. Vayehi Na'ar mi Beit Lechem Yehuda mi Mishpachat Yehuda v'hu Levi v'hu gar sham. So there was a young man from Bethlehem in the tribe of Judah, or in the territory of Judah, from the family of Judah. So he's a Judah family, and he's a Levi, and he was who was living there. So how could he be a Levi who's also from the tribe of Judah? So that I don't know. So we'll see if the commentary clarifies that, unless his name was Levi, which could be. So it's ambiguous from the text. Either his name is Levi and he was dwelling there, or he was a Levite. But if he was a Levite, how is he from the Judah family? Okay, so just a question.
What if his mother married a Levite?
That he'd still be considered a Levite. Your tribal affiliation is based on your father, not your mother.
So he wouldn't be from the tribe of Judah then?
Correct. He's from his father's family. 8. Vayelech ha'ish me ha'ir mi Beit Lechem Yehuda lagur ba'asher yimtza vayavo har Ephraim ad Beit Micha la'asot darko. So the man, I guess his name is not Levi, because they would have called him Levi. They're just calling him a man. So that man left the city from Bethlehem in Judah to live wherever he could find a place to live. And he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to Micha's home. La'asot darko is translated as he journeyed. So it's just to make his way is la'asot darko. And I just want to see how Alter translates it. Oh, wending his way. Wending his way is how Alter translates. 9. Vayomer lo Micha me'ayin tavo. Vayomer elav Levi anochi mi Beit Lechem Yehuda va'anochi holech lagur ba'asher emtza. So Micha says to this guy who just wanders into his home, where are you from? And he said to him, I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm looking to live wherever I can. 10. And so this is also unusual because there were Levitical cities that were set up around the land of Israel. So why does he need to find a place to live? Why isn't he living in a Levitical city? 10. Vayomer lo Micha Shava imadi, veheyed li la'av ulakohen, va'anochi etein lacha aseret kesef layamim, ve'erech begadim, umichyatecha, vayelech halevi. So Micha says to him, live here and be for me a father and a Kohen and a priest. And I'll give you 10 pieces of silver. It says here by the year, 10 pieces of silver for days, la yamim. It could be an annual salary of 10 pieces of silver. And I'll give you clothes and food. And so the Levi went. That's what it means. The Levi went. Does it mean that he agreed? What is vayelech? So he went. So he went into Micha's house. Did he go someplace else? The Hebrew is kind of strange here. 11. Vayoel Halevi lashevet et ha'ish vayehi hana'ar lo ke'achad mibanav. So the Levite was content to live with the person, and I think the person here is Micha, and the lad was as one of his sons. 12. Vayemale Micha et Yad Halevi, vayehi lo hana'ar lechohen, vayehi beveit Micha. And Micha filled the hand of the Levite, which is translated here as consecrated him. And the lad was a Kohen for him, and he was in the house of Micha. 13. Vayomer Micha, ata yadati ki etiv Adonai li, ki haya li halevi lechohen. And Micha said, now I know that God has favored me, because the Levite became a Kohen. Yes, Barry. You were unmuted. That's all. So I thought you just unmuted yourself to ask a question. Okay, so this is a bizarre story. I really don't understand the purpose of it unless we're going to meet this man again in the next chapter. So otherwise, what's the point of this story here? So let's take a look down below. So 288. A Levite of Bethlehem, in search of a home, calls at Micah's house and is persuaded to stay and officiate as priest. Bethlehem in Judah, to distinguish it from other places of the same name. Like see Joshua 19. So there could be other Bethlehems in the land of Israel. The family of Judah, that is, he belonged to the family of Judah from his father's side. Levite. Rashi explains that he was a Levite on his mother's side. So that means he's not a Levi. Okay, just the way that we understand it today doesn't. The only purpose of your mother being a Kohen and Levi, the only benefit that has to you is that. So let's say a couple has a child. Their first child is a boy. The husband is an Israelite. The mother is a Kohen or a Levi. So she's a daughter of a Kohen or Levi. Their child does not have a Pidyon Haben. Other things being equal, baby's born naturally, it's the first birth, and it's a boy, no Pidyon Haben. That's the only thing where a mother who is a Kohen or Levi can impart to their child. Otherwise, when that child is called up to the Torah, you do not say, you don't call yourself Kohen or Levi based on your mother. It's based on your father. So I don't understand that. So Rashi can explain that he's a Levite by his mother's side, but I'm not sure what the Bible is doing calling him a Levi. Yeah, Barry.
So now I do have a question.
Yeah.
But in in the Torah and in the Bible, the Jewish Bible, there there is more there's more credence given to the matriarchal line.
Yes.
So since this is
Um,
biblical story, I mean, in other words, now Rabbinic Judaism has changed that, but could this be that back then that's how it was?
so actually, the credence to the matriarchal line comes from the rabbis. In the Bible, it's all about the father. So in other words, the fact that characters in the Bible are married to non-Israelite women has no bearing on the Bible. They don't think that that's a bad thing. Like Moses is
Right.
married to the daughter of a Midianite priest. So that's not a big deal because in the Bible, it's the father who determines everything about the child. So it doesn't matter what the mother is. Um, I'm just so now if we continue in the commentary, Kimchi says, another medieval commentator, says that he was a Levi from both sides. Okay, so if you're a Levi from your father and your mother, how can you be a Judahite at the same time?
Right.
So he lived, however, in Bethlehem, which belonged to the family of Judah. So in other words, so that the descriptor of the family of Judah is about Bethlehem being of the family of Judah, not the person being of the family. So in other words, translate verse 7, there was a young man from Bethlehem from Bethlehem of the territory of Judah, from the family of Judah. So that is Bethlehem is from the family of Judah, and he was a Levi. That now we're back to describing the lad. So there was a lad, parentheses, from Bethlehem and Judah, from the family of Judah, end parentheses, and he was a Levi. So that's how Kimchi can translate it to make sense of the otherwise that doesn't make sense. Okay. According to rabbinical interpretation, he was related to the family of Judah in his actions, which resembled those of King Menashe. So, in other words, the fact that he was willing to give up his being a Levi in the normal Israelite sense to become this alternative Kohen in Micha's house shows that he's an idolater. And the greatest of all idolaters from all the kings of Israel was King Menashe, and he happened to rule the longest also. King Menashe brought child sacrifice into the southern kingdom of Israel. And so, according to the rabbis, then, he's associated with the worst of all the kings of Judah. So that's what we're supposed to be thinking about.
Is that
Yeah, go ahead.
what is that in one of the child sacrifice is in one of the biblical books?
Oh yeah, it's
Plain and
you
clear?
just read 2 Kings,
2 Kings, okay.
and when we get there,
Yeah.
it's I can't tell you what chapter in 2 Kings, but if you Google King Menashe, 2 Kings, it'll tell you what chapters describe him and the child sacrifices that he instituted. Okay, so as he journeyed, verse 8, literally to make his way, that is, while continuing on the way he was traveling, he had no intentions of remaining at Micah's house. A father, that is, a teacher and an instructor, went in, literally went, that is, followed the advice of Micah. And verse 13 on 289, now I know, etc. His optimism proved somewhat premature, as revealed in the next chapter. Micah had committed evil, although intending to serve God, and punishment followed. Okay, so clearly I had not read ahead, but trying to understand what the purpose of this story is. So it's setting up for more information in the next chapter. So let's look at Alter on this section, beginning on page 195 in his book. Bethlehem in Judah. There was another Bethlehem in the tribe of Zebulun. From the clan of Judah, this looks like a contradiction because he's a Levite. It has been proposed that the story harks back to an early moment in Israelite history when the Levite's tribal identity may not have crystallized, and Levite might be the designation of a cultic officiant. So in other words, there could be some Bible scholars who theorize that the whole idea of Levi, the tribe of Levi, being designated as the cultic representative for the entire nation of Israel was a slow process in coming. And until then, there could have been individuals from each of the tribes designated as a Levi, which could have been the title of a clergy or something like that. But I don't know. It's all supposition. Sojourned, this is a term of temporary residence, and as the story unfolds, it's evident that the Levite is an itinerant. Father and priest, 196. Father here means someone in a position of authority. In fact, the Levite is a lad, a generation younger than Micah, as one may infer from verse 12. Micah had already installed one of his sons to act as priest, but he prefers to have the Levite because he's a cultic professional. Whether hereditary or not is unclear. 10 silver shekels a year. If this is a reasonable annual income, the amount of 1,100 shekels would have been enormous. Right, from the earlier in the chapter. And the Levite went. This brief clause, 2 Hebrew words, seems extraneous, and some textual critics propose deleting it. And he was in Micah's house. The blandness of the verb to be here, not he dwelled, stayed, or he sojourned, introduces a hint of ambiguity about his relation to Micah's house. In the event, he will betray Micah and move on. Okay, so let's look at chapter 18 and see what happens here. And chapter 18 is 31 sentences long, but let's read the first 6 verses. Back to page 289 in our text. Bayamim hahem, ein melech b'Yisrael, uvayamim hahem, shevet hadani, mevakesh lo nachala lashevet, ki lo nafla lo ad hayomahu, b'toch shiftei Yisrael b'nachala. In those days, there wasn't a king in Israel, and in those days, the tribe of Dan was searching for a land portion in which to dwell, because until that time, there wasn't one assigned to it among the tribes of Israel as an inheritance. So we'd have to look back at the book of Joshua to understand the details here, and we'll see in the commentary also to try to explain this to us, why the tribe of Dan is kind of homeless.
And the tribe of Dan was also the tribe that had a temple am I correct?
Right. Yeah. Up north. Yes.
And that was also, is that where the some of those kind of pagan rituals infused?
Don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens here. 2, Vayishlachu b'nei Dan mimishpachtam 5 anashim miksotam, anashim b'nei Chayil mitzara u'me'eshta'ol leragel et haaretz ulechakra vayamru aleihem lechu chikru et haaretz vayava'u har Ephraim ad Beit Micha vayalinu sham. So the people of Dan sent from their families 5 men, 5 men from their number. Not sure what that means. Men of valor, or strong people, like soldier type people, from Sarah and Eshtaol. Remember, Samson is from these places. So he's a Danite also. To scout out the land and look and search it. And they said to them, go search out the land. that is, the Dan families, said to these five, go search out the land. And they came to the Ephraimite hill country, to the house of Micha, and they lodged there. 3, Hema im Beit Micha, vehema hikiru et kol hana'ar halevi, vayasuru sham, vayomru lo, mi heviyacha halom, uma ata oseh bazeh, uma lacha po. So they were with the house of Micha, and they recognized the voice of the young Levite, and they went away, or they turned aside, and they said to him, who brought you here? And what are you doing here? And what are you up to here? It's unclear how these 5 Danites know this Levite from Judah, who's in the house of Micha. 4, Vayomer alehem, kazo v'chazeh asali Micha, vayiskereni ve'ehilo lechohen. And he said to them, this and that, like he's not giving, the Bible's not giving us the details. He said to them, this and that Micha did for me, and he hired me, and I was for him, and I am for him a Kohen. Vayomru lo, sha'alna ve'elohim, v'neid'a hatatzliach darkenu, asher anachnu holchim aleha. And they said to him, ask God so that we would know if our journey will be successful, or our mission will be successful. That is, to find a home for the tribe of Dan. Whether our path will be successful, which we are going on. 6, Vayomer lahem ha-kohen, lechu l'shalom, nochach Adonai, darkechem asher telchuva. And the Kohen said to them, go in peace, before the Lord is your way wherein you go. So in other words, God is with you. I think that it's a cryptic way of saying, go in peace, God is with you, your path will be good. Okay, so let's look at the commentary on these first 6 sentences. The Danites, bottom of 289, settled around Sarah and Eshtaol, find themselves cramped for living space, and unable to secure for themselves a permanent hold, send out a party to prospect who on their way come to Micah's house. No king, hence the idolatry related in the chapter. An inheritance, a hereditary possession in the land.
It seems that the author of the book is saying that a king would be the solution to some of these problems.
Yes, exactly. And that sets up a whole other biblical scholarly debate as to whether kings are good for Israel or not. So in other words,
I'm thinking of Samuel later on, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the book of Samuel kind of argues with the people of Israel, what do you need a king for? And what's so great about having a king? So it's maybe there are different traditions in the Bible about the use of having a king, because most of the kings of Israel, as the Bible proves, were not very good when it came to monotheism and a commitment to God's ways. Most of the kings are described as allowing idolatry to take place, especially the kings of the northern kingdom of Israel. So it's unclear why the book of Judges thinks having a king would be a good thing. Okay, verse 2, from their whole number, that is, from all parts of the tribe, so that the mission might be representative. So in other words, how these 5 were chosen. So the 5 were chosen from all parts of the tribe. Ehrlich adopts the explanation of Metzudat David from their leading men. So maybe that's what Miksotam means, taking the 5 from among the leading men of the tribe. Sarah Eshtaol, see on chapter 13. Unto the house, on 290, they arrived at the house but did not enter it. Lodged, stayed the night. They knew the voice. The Levite had perhaps, so right now the commentary is trying to figure out how these 5 Danites know the Levi. The Levite had perhaps made their acquaintance on a previous occasion. How and where are not stated, but it may be inferred from chapter 17, verse 8, that the young man had wandered about the country, right? So in his wandering around the country, he could have encountered these 5 Danites. While so doing, he had met many persons, among whom were these Danites. Alternatively, since the lad was from the family of Kohat, that we have no idea about that, that's the rabbis coming up with that, whose Levitical ties were in the tribe of Dan, they recognized him. Right, so this commentary, Malbim, makes this connection that maybe this Levi is from a Levitical family that's associated with the Danites, and that's how they know him. Or, since he was praying aloud at the time, they heard and recognized his voice. Okay. Hither, the same word halom was used in God's address to Moses in Exodus 3. So the Midrash comments that the Danites employed the word deliberately to hint that as a descendant of Moses, the Levite had no right to be officiating at an idolatrous shrine. So according to the rabbis, this is Rashi from the tractate Baba Batra in the Talmud, page 110, there's a story there about these Danites, these 5 Danites, who, according to the story, seem like good people. And the rabbis make them into good people and point out that this Levi is a bad person. He's an idolater. Okay, verse.
Joe, no, just FYI, the old version of the book has a very simple explanation. It says the Danites recognized from his speech that he did not belong to that district, and the existence of a variety of dialects is attested by previous versions.
Okay, so, that's interesting too,
and which actually relates to what I was saying before about how women in the Torah were often treated differently. I mean, I know that it was patriarchal, that it was the men who but at the same time, what I was trying to say was that a lot of the women were afforded things that in rabbinic Judaism maybe not as much. That's kind of what I meant. So that early explanation that maybe his mother, maybe his mother was that was all I was getting to.
Okay. Yeah.
Jonah?
Yes, Bess.
I might have missed it, but where does it indicate that the Levite was making an idolatrous shrine?
He wasn't. Micah did, and he agreed to work there. Right? In the first 7 sentences that we, in this, at the end of chapter 17, this Levi agrees to work for him and become a Levi or a Kohen in that shrine.
But then Micah seems to have converted. He says, now I know that the Lord will do me good. In other words,
he thinks that he's doing fine and setting up his own personal shrine and hiring his own personal clergy.
Okay.
But for the rabbis, that's a bad thing. And I think maybe for the narrator of the book of Judges, it's a bad thing too. So we'll see what happens here. So verse 5, ask counsel of God, as in chapter 1:1. They did not appreciate that the ephod, though through which the inquiry would be made, was used for an idolatrous purpose. As mentioned above, according to many authorities, this is profane since it refers to the teraphim. Right? So, in other words, how he's inquiring of God is through idolatrous means. As Micha, as we were told in the beginning of chapter 17, all the vessels or vestments that he made that remind us of some of the Kohen, like the ephod, is something that a Kohen in the Mishkan would wear, but there was also teraphim there, these little idols too. So how he's asking counsel of God is idolatrous. So verse 6, so the Danite, the Levite is telling the 5 Danites, go in peace, God's with you. Verse 6, the men proceed northwards and find a city called Laish, situated in an isolated and undefended position amid fertile fields. Okay, so which is what we'll read in verse 7. So let's continue. Let's read the first 6 sentences in Alter about this. So 197 in Alter. Till that day, no estate had fallen to it in the midst of the tribes of Israel. This formulation gives the impression that no tribal territory was assigned to the Danites. The actual case was that they were not able to hold their own against their Philistine neighbors and the local Canaanites, and so were driven to migrate. The Philistine pressure on Dan is evident in the Samson narrative, which immediately precedes this story. Okay, so that could explain why the Danites are looking for a way to where to live, because of what happened with the Philistines. They recognize the voice of the Levite lad. Given his itinerancy, they may have actually run across him somewhere else in the south. Others conjecture that they detect a Judean accent. Thus and so has Micah done for me. This summarizing formula, which one would not find in novelistic dialogue, is occasionally introduced into biblical dialogue. Thus and so obviously refers to the Levite's appointment as priest with the annual stipend. 198, inquire, pray of God. This idiom indicates inquiry of an oracle. The probable instrument would have been the ephod. Before the Lord is your way on which you go. Though the burden of this clause is that God will favor their endeavor, the formulation is a bit vague and even ambiguous. Like oracles everywhere, the Levite is hedging his bets. So the unusual Hebrew formulation kind of leaves it up to the imagination. Is he saying that go in peace, or maybe he's not?
Is the issue that Micah made his own ephod because the oracles would use the ephod in the back in the in the 5 books,
Yes, right, but it would be up to the Kohen in the Mishkan wearing the vestments there that stuff would happen.
So it says that he's copying it and doing the same thing.
Into his own private shrine. Okay, let's read 7 through 10. Vayelchu chameshet ha'anashim, vayavo'u Layesha, Vayiru et ha'am, asher b'kirba, Yoshevet lavetach, kemishpat Sidonim, shoket uvoteach, ve'en machlim davar ba'aretz, Yoresh etzer, urechokim hema mitzidonim, ve'davar ein lahem im adam. Okay, now, the 5 men came to Laish, this place, and saw the people that were there, how they dwelled in security, like the Sidonians, quiet and secure. For there is no one in the land possessing authority that might put them to shame in anything. And they were far from the Sidonians and had no dealing with any man. So they came to this territory that was kind of isolated. Okay, wherever Laish is, it's isolated. 8, Vayavo'u el achehem tsara ve'eshta'ol, vayamru lahem achehem ma'atem. So they came back to their brothers in Sarah and Eshtaol, and they said to them, what say you? Like, in other words, they told them, we came to Laish, found this isolated territory. What do you think? Do you think we should move there? 9, Vayomru, Kuma, V'na'aleh alehem, Ki ra'inu et ha'aretz, v'hinei tova ma'od, Va'atem machshim al ta'altsu lalechet al te'altsu lalechet lavo lareshet et haaretz. And they said, get up and let's go there. Let's go against them, because we saw the land, and it is very good. And you, why are you quiet? Don't be lazy to go to possess the land. 10, Kivo achem tavou el am boteach, vehaaretz rachavat yadayim, ki netana Elohim beyedchem, makom asher ein sham machsor, kol davar asher ba'aretz. So when you go there, you'll come to a secure people, and the land is wide or large, or like it's there's a lot of land there, because God is giving it to you, a place that for which you will lack nothing. Everything that's in the earth is there for you. Okay, let's see the commentary below. 291, Laish, also called Leshem, not far from Lebanon and the sources of the Jordan. The name Tel El-Kadi, Mount of the Judge, preserves the later name Dan. It lay in the valley belonging to Beit Rachov. Okay. Dwelt. The Hebrew has a feminine form. On the analogy of Exodus 5 and Jeremiah 8, the subject may be the people, or the feminine word city understood. Okay. So in other words, it's just trying to explain why it switches to the feminine form of the words here. Zidonians, that is Phoenicians. The deduction has been drawn that the locality was the site of a settlement, not of the Canaanites, and that the Phoenicians were a peace-loving community averse to war. Possessing authority, the phrase Yoresh Etzer occurs nowhere else, and its meaning is uncertain. The literal translation seems to be one who inherits power of restraint, and it may signify heir to the throne. Rashi explains that heirs were restricted in number, and were they to die, there would be no others to fight anybody who took possession of their land. Put them to shame in anything, another obscure phrase. Kimchi and Ralbag construe it as a parallel to the preceding, one who instructs and rebukes. Rashi quotes an explanation he had heard. No one had occasion to ask help of his neighbor, with the possibility of being offended by a refusal, because the district was exceptionally fertile. From the Zidonians, who would consequently not be concerned to defend them if the Danites appropriated their land. Had no dealings, they had no treaty of mutual aid with any neighboring people. What say ye? Literally, what you? What have you to report? And it gives an example from the book of Ruth with a similar formulation. Are you still in active dallying? Large, literally, 292, literally broad of hands, stretching wide to the right and left, not cooped up among the hills. Okay, so it's still kind of cryptic here, unclear what's going on. But there's a little bit more in Alter on 198. Dwelling secure in the manner of the Sidonians. The inhabitants of the Phoenician city of Sidon, to the north of the Mediterranean coast, were evidently thought to live relatively free of fear from foreign attacks. They were far off from the Sidonians, nor did they have any dealings with other people. Though the gist of these two clauses is that Laish was isolated and had no allies on which to rely, the wording, especially of the second clause, is somewhat obscure. A people that dwells secure, as the use of this phrase in verse 7 makes clear, the gist is that this people lives in a sense of security, not suspecting that they will be attacked. Okay, let's see, we have a little bit more time. Let's continue now. I'm not sure that there's a break coming up, but let's see. Vayis'u misham, verse 11, mimishpachat hadani, mitzar'a ume'eshta'ol, shesh me'ot ish, chagur kalei milchama. So from the Danite families, from Tzara and Eshtaol, 600 people went, girded with instruments of war. So they 600 battle-ready people left. It's Tzara and Eshtaol. 12, V'ya'alu v'yachanu b'kiryat Ye'arim b'Yehuda, al kein kar'u lamakom ahu machane Dan ad hayom hazeh, hine acharei Kiryat Ye'arim. So they went up and camped in Kiryat Ye'arim in Judah. Therefore, in this parentheses, therefore they called that place Dan Camp until this day. It is behind Kiryat Ye'arim. 13, Vaya'avru misham har Ephraim, Vayavo ad Beit Micha. So then they came to the hill country of Ephraim, and they came to Micha's house. Right? So this is on the way to Laish. They stop at Micha's house, these 600 armed men. Vaya'anu chameshet ha'anashim, ha'holchim l'ragel et ha'aretz, Laish, vayomru el achehem, hayadatem ki yesh babatim ha'eleh ephod utrafim ufesel umasecha va'ata de'u ma ta'asu. And so the 5 men who were the ones going out to spy out the land went out to spy out Laish, said to their brothers, did you know that in these houses, that is of Micha's house, there's an ephod and trafim and a graven image and a molten image, and now you know what to do. So in other words, these 5 guys were not counted among the 600. They stayed at Micha's house, I guess, and they told these 600 who were going to come by, hey, do you know what's going on here? There's idolatry going on here. You know what you have to do. 15. Vayasuru shama, vayavo'u el beit ha'na'ar halevi beit Micha, vayishalu lo l'shalom. So they turned aside and they came to the Levi guy in the house of Micha, and they asked him peace. That, in other words, peace unto you. 16, V'shesh me'ot ish chagurim klei milchamtam, nitzavim petach hasha'ar asher mibnei Dan. And the 600 fighting-clad weapons of war are standing there at the opening of the gate from who are the children of Dan. Right, so these 600 Danites are standing there at the gate asking this guy, hey, how you doing? 17, which is, I think we're supposed to understand is kind of a threatening, how you doing? Like you're not going to be doing well for much longer. 17, Vaya'alu, chameshet anashim, hahochim l'ragel et ha'aretz, ba'u shama, lakchu et ha'pesel ve'et ha'ephod, ve'et ha'trafim, ve'et ha'masecha, v'ha'kohen nitzav petach ha'sha'ar, v'shesh me'ot ha'ish hechagur klei ha'milchama. So the 5 guys, who were the 5 scouters, came there and took the graven image and the ephod and the trafim and the molten image, and the Kohen was standing at the entrance to the gate, and the 600 weapon-clad people were there too. Okay, so now there's a standoff. 18, Ve'ele ba'u beit Micha, vayikchu et pesel ha'ephod, ve'et ha'trafim, ve'et ha'masecha, vayomer aleihem ha'kohen, ma atem osim? So they came to Micha's house. They took the graven image, the ephod, the trafim, the molten image, and the Kohen says to them, What are you doing? 19, Vayomru lo, hacharesh, sim yadcha al picha, velech imanu, veheye lanu la'avu lekohen, hatov heyotcha kohen lebeit ish achad, o heyotcha kohen leshevet ulemishpacha b'Yisrael. So they said to him, shut up, hacharesh, hold your peace. No, really, it more literally should be, shut up. Put your hand on your mouth, right? Stop talking and go with us and be for us a father and a priest. Would it be better for you to be a Kohen in one house for one man, or to be a Kohen for a whole tribe and family in Israel? Okay, so they're saying if you want to stay alive, essentially, it's what the impression is. Like, why else are they have their weapons holstered, right? So they're threatening him. You come with us, and all will be well, or you can stay here. 20. Vayitav leva kohen, vayikach et ha'ephod, v'et ha'terafim, v'et ha'pasel, vayavo b'kerev ha'am. So the Kohen made a good choice, and he took the Trafim and the graven image, and he went with them. 21. Vayifnu vayelechu vayasimu et hataf ve'et hamikneh ve'et hakevuda lifneihem. So they turned and departed, and put the little ones, and the cattle, and the goods before them. 22. Hema hirchiku mi beit Micha, v'ha'anashim asher babatim asher im beit Micha niz'aku vayadbiku et bnei Dan. So they went a distance from Micha's house, and the people in the houses that were part of Micha's house cried out, and they overtook, like they chased after them and overtook the Dan people. 23, Vayikra'u el b'nei Dan, Vayasebu mipneihem, Vayomru lamicha malacha kiniz akta. So they cried out to the people of Dan, and they turned their faces and said to Micha, what's wrong with you that you cried out? 24, Vayomer et Elohai, asher asiti lekachtem, v'et hakohen, vatelchu, umali od, umazeh, tomru elai malach. So he said, Micha said, you took my gods, the gods that I made, you took, and the Kohen. Right. So you took the gods that I made and the Kohen, and you went. And what am I to do? And what and how can you say what's wrong? Obviously, this is what's wrong. You took everything from me. 25. Vayomru elav b'nei Dan, al tashma kolcha imanu, pen yifkeu vachem anashim marei nefesh, v'yasafta nafshecha v'nefesh beitecha. And they said to him, the people of Dan said to him, don't let us hear your voice with us, because we might hurt you, that people of ill will might hurt you, and you'll lose your life and the lives of all the people of your house. 26, Vayelchu b'nei Dan ledarkam, vayar Micha ki chazakim hema mimenu, vayifen vayashav el beito. So the people of Dan went on their way, and Micha saw that they were stronger than him, and he turned back and returned to his house. So instead of there being a fight and people dying, he saw that he was outnumbered and the people were much stronger than him, and he went home. So 27, Vehema lakhu et asher asa Micha ve'et hakohen asher hayalo vayavau al Laish al am shoketu voteach vayaku otam lefi charev ve'et ha'ir sarfu ba'esh. So they, the Danite people, took everything that Micha had made and the Kohen that he had, and they came to Laish, to the people who were quiet and secure, and they smote them by sword, and the city they burned down. 28, Ve'en matzil, ki rechoka hi mitzidon, ve'davar ein lahem im adam, ve'hi be'emek asher levet rechov, va'yivnu et ha'ir va'yeshvu va. And there was nobody to save them, because it was far from Sidon, and they had no relationship with other people, and it's in a valley that is near Beit Rechov, and they built the city and they dwelled there. 29, Vayikra'u Shem Ha'ir Dan, B'Shem Dan Avihem, Asher Yulad LiYisrael, V'Ulam Laish Shem Ha'ir LaRishona. So they called the city Dan after Dan, their forefather, who was born to Israel, even though Laish was the name of the city first. 30, Vayakimu lahem b'nei Dan et hapasel, v'Yehonatan ben Gershom ben Menashe, hu uvanav hayu kohanim l'shevet hadani ad yom galot haaretz. And the people of Dan established the graven image, and Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Menashe, he and his sons were the Kohanim of the tribe of Dan until they were exiled. So it says until the captivity of the land. It's really until the exile of the land. So the Dan. So this could be that altar that you're reminding us of, Barry. That right. This is the temple that they set up there. That was there until the Assyrians came and exiled them.
And it wasn't so much that they had a problem with Micah; it's that they wanted to
their
use
own stuff
for themselves. Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah. 31. Vayasimu lahem et pesel Micha asher asa kol yemei heyot beit Elohim b'Shilo. So they set up the idol of Micah that Micah had made all the time while there was the house of God in Shiloh. So there was the house of God in Shiloh. At the same time, Dan had their own God house. Okay, so this whole story is to remind us, or to give us the background of where the idolatrous Dan tribe came from. Okay, so let's look, and the time we have left, let's see if we can look at the commentary here. There's not much. So let's see. I think we left off at verse 11. Yeah. The Danites set out 600 armed warriors, accompanied by their women and children, their flocks, and all their belongings. We're on 292. They encamped near Kiryat Yarim and passed on to Mount Ephraim, where was the home of Micah. Having taken possession of Micah's images, they persuaded the Levite to accompany them. Micah protests in vain. Kiryat Yarim, meaning city of forests, now identified with Korbet Urma, about 4 miles east of Beit Shemesh. It was a city of the Gibeonites, which escaped destruction through the deception played on Joshua. In the time of Samuel, the ark remained there for a period. Machane Dan, the camp of Dan. Behind, that is, west of. Answered, the verb anah sometimes means to speak. It's so rendered here. These houses, Micah's home, consisted of several buildings. 293, of his welfare, literally for peace, they gave him the conventional greeting. Gate of the city. 17, according to Mitzudat David, the course of events was as follows. The 5 investigators left Micah's house with the Levite, described in anticipation as the priest, to consult with the 600 men at the gate. They left the Levite with these men and returned to the house to take the graven image. graven image of the ephod. Kimchi infers that there were images without an ephod, but Micah's had one. Lay thy hand upon thy mouth, the gesture of one who forces himself to keep silent. 294 was glad. He accepted their invitation with alacrity. The little ones, so sure were they of victory that they took their children with them. It must be presumed that the women also accompanied them, although this is not mentioned. The goods, the noun kivudah, derived from the root kaved, to be heavy, and not found elsewhere, means burdens, impediments. Before them, to safeguard them against attack from the rear. The men, Micah's house, the loss of the images, and the priest affected also Micah's neighbors, since they believed that their welfare was endangered. Overtook, literally caused to cleave. They turned, the subject is the Danites. What ails you, company? Literally, what to you that you are mustered? 295, what have I more? You have deprived me of these, so what's left me? Angry fellows, literally embittered of soul, men of nasty temper. Lose, literally gather into your people. Too strong, there was no king in Israel to administer justice, and so they had to yield to superior force. Capture of Laish. Burnt the city with fire. The reason for this drastic action may have been that it was defiled by idolatry, or to strike terror into the hearts of the surviving inhabitants so that they would not counterattack, or to implant fear in the surrounding villages and towns. It was far from Zidon, see verse 7, lies by or belongs to, leads to. Beit Rechov, supposed by some authorities to be Jebel Hunin, southwest of Tel El Kadi. It cannot be the Rechov of chapter 1, but is possibly the same as the town mentioned in Numbers. In the 10th century, Beit Rechov was an Aramean city. 296, who was born unto Israel. This fact is mentioned to remove a possible impression that the Dan, after whom the place was named, was the father of the group of settlers and not the ancestor of the tribe. Laish, see Joshua 19, where it is called Leshem. Genesis 14, where the city is called Dan as early as the time of Abraham. Commentator Keset HaSofer theorized that these were two different cities, one named Dan in ancient times and the other originally named Laish or Leshem and renamed by the tribe of Dan. Jonathan, he was the aforementioned Levite, so now he has a name. Menashe, the rabbis declared that the suspended letter Nun in the Hebrew text, right, if you just look at the Hebrew there, the Nun is written above the others, indicates that the name is really Moses, who was the father of Gershom. The alteration was made from respect for the great leader so as not to associate his name with a grandson who ministered to idols. The captivity of the land, commentators differ as to the captivity which is intended. Rashi refers it to the exile of the northern tribes by Sennacherib, and Kimchi connecting this verse with the next to the exile of the ark from Shiloh. Ralbag understands it as the exile of the Danites alone and places the captivity in the time of Yavin, king of Canaan. So it's unclear what exile it is. Shiloh, the modern Salem, situated on a low hill, enclosed on all sides by higher ground, 9.5 miles northeast of Bethel. All right, let's look at altar here. Bottom of 198, 600 men. As the recurrence of this number in military context in the book of Samuel suggests, this is the fixed size of a combat unit, something like a battalion. These houses, from the plural, one infers that Micah's house was part of a small compound. And now know what you should do. Anticipating the conquest of Laish, they want to acquire the paraphernalia to set up a cult. Thereafter, they take the town. The 600 men stationed themselves at the entrance of the gate. The 5 spies, whom the Levite already knows, are sent in to parley with him, while the armed enforcers wait at the gate. Took the statue and the ephod and the teraphim and the molten image. They immediately seized the cultic objects, not asking the Levite, who was in no position to resist. And the former group, the Hebrew says merely, and these, but it has to refer to the 5 spies in contradistinction to the 600 men. Put your hand over your mouth and go with us and be father and priest for us. They follow an implied threat shut up if you know what's good for you, with the inducement of an offered position. And the priest was pleased. Nobody in this story, beginning with Micah and his mother, has noble motives. The Levite immediately recognizes that this new position, priest for a tribe, is a considerable advancement, no doubt with a larger salary, and so he happily colludes in the theft of the cultic articles. They put before them the little ones and the cattle and the heavy goods. Only now do we learn that the 600 warriors are not just a raiding party, but the first wave of a tribal migration, having brought with them their children, and presumably their wives, and their possessions. They put all these in front of them because the attack they anticipate would come from the rear from a pursuing party of Micah and his men. My God that I made. His language here, in keeping with statute and molten image, is frankly pagan. No one in this story appears to be a serious monotheist. Though the narrative was composed late, the whole bizarre story appears to be an authentic reflection of an early moment in pre-monotheistic Israelite history when the exclusive worship of Yahweh was not generally established. Embittered men. This is their condition because they have been displaced from their tribal territory and are for the moment homeless. Micah saw that they were stronger than he. The story plays out through force. Micah can scarcely contend with 600 heavily armed, ruthless men who have just threatened to kill him and his whole household, and so he has to let them keep the precious objects they have stolen from him, which he had fashioned with silver he originally stole from his mother. They struck them down with the sword. No moral considerations are involved. These people have attractive land. Dan needs land. The Danites slaughtered the inhabitants of Laish and built their own town there. Like the name. The Masoretic text reads, in the name, but many Hebrew manuscripts show the standard idiom, like the name. Who was born to Israel? The reference is to Jacob, not to the nation. And on 202, we'll finish up. Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses. Moses, he says, not Menashe. At the very end, we are given the name and genealogy of the Levite. The Masoretic text inserts a superscript nun in Moshe, turning it into Menashe, but this can't be right because Gershom was the son of Moses, and Menashe is not a priestly tribe. Rashi aptly explains the orthographic oddity. Out of respect for Moses, a nun is inscribed in order to change the name. The genealogy marks a steep decline. Moses' own grandson is a base sacerdotal mercenary. Officiating a cult is at the very least semi-pagan. Placing the Levite just 2 generations after Moses would mean that the whole story is supposed to take place very early, at the beginning of the 12th century BCE, a temporal location that has the inconvenient consequence of putting the Danite migration before the time of Samson, a Danite living in the south near the Philistines. Till the day the land went into exile. The reference is to the exile of the northern kingdom of Israel by the Assyrians in 721 BCE, which means that the story, at least in its final formulation, had to be composed after that date, unless this final notation is a later editorial addition. All the days that the house of God was in Shiloh. The anomalous introduction of this reference to the Shiloh sanctuary at the very end of the story is in all likelihood, as Yair Zakovich has argued, an editorial move to link the material here with the beginning of the book of Samuel, where Shiloh plays a central role. So we need a kind of a connection to understand in Samuel what's going on at Shiloh. Here's a little reference here to give us a little taste. Yes, Shiloh was where the Mishkan was. Okay, so a bizarre story to give us some background on the tribe of Dan and the idolatrous house of worship that they established there, and possibly a connection to Moses or not with the whole thing too. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and we'll see you next Friday.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom.